Hey, what's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well. So recently we built a relatively compact gaming slash performance PC for early 2021. And a few weeks back we were testing out the late 2020 Mac Mini powered by the M1 SoC by Apple. And we're super impressed by the overall performance. Essentially, this tiny PC that starts around $700 gives you the same level of performance that we found on the late 2019 version of the Mac Pro that we tested early last year that retailed for over $6,000. The question that we want to address in this video is how does the M1 Mac Mini compare against a relatively powerful performance PC that retails for anywhere between $1,600 to $1,800. Now in terms of our PC specifically, it's powered by an AMD Ryzen 7 5800X. That's an 8-core chip with 16 threads. In terms of RAM and storage configuration, we have 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory from Corsair and an SN750 500GB capacity SSD by Western Digital. The motherboard that we're using is a B550 Oros Pro AX by Gigabyte. It's an ITX board, so super compact. Now in terms of our discrete graphics card solution, we're going to be using a Zotac RTX 3060 Ti. It's a great mid to higher end range card in the current NVIDIA lineup. Now if you want more information about the PC, including the build process, definitely check out our dedicated video in the description down below. Now in terms of comparing the specifications of the M1 Mac Mini, it's kind of difficult. They're running on completely different architectures, but the Mac Mini that we have is the baseline 699 configuration, which comes with the 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, as well as the 16-core neural engine, but only 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of SSD storage. But obviously you can upgrade the RAM to 16 gigabytes and 2 terabytes in terms of the long-term SSD storage. Now, straight off the bat, there are some major limitations to the M1 architecture. Firstly, there is no user expandable options in terms of memory or SSD. It is whatever you get, and currently you're only limited to 16 gigabytes of RAM on the current M1 SiP platform. And in terms of physical ports and connectivity options, you're also limited there. Only 2 USB Type-A connections and 2 Thunderbolt connections and a single HDMI connection. You can only really support up to 2 monitors on the Mac Mini. One monitor could be up to 6K resolution, the other one up to 4K resolution. And unfortunately, unlike the previous generation Mac Minis, there is no support for eGPU expansion if you want to use an external graphics card to either boost your GPU performance capabilities or to hook up additional external displays. Furthermore, in terms of software compatibility, you are going to run into some issues with the M1, specifically if you want to install Windows 10 natively using Boot Camp. That's not going to be supported with the M1 Mac Mini. You can run Windows virtually. Now, if you use a lot of x86 Intel-based apps on the Mac OS X platform, some of those apps can be translated to work on the M1 using Rosetta 2, but probably not going to be optimized. All the native Apple applications work flawlessly on the M1, are highly optimized for the chip, and other popular apps are being quickly adopted to work with the new M1 chip, including the Adobe suite. They've just released beta versions of Premiere Pro, Lightroom, Photoshop to enable GPU rendering capabilities. Specifically with Premiere Pro, you can now use the H.264, HVEC, and ProRes codecs to edit, render, and export your videos with GPU acceleration enabled. Now, before we take a look at the actual performance differences between the M1 Mac Mini and our custom-built PC, I do want to bring it back to the actual form factor of the Mac Mini being extremely more portable and convenient in terms of size. It only measures around 197 millimeters by 197 millimeters. It's only about 36 millimeters in terms of height. It can pretty much fit on anybody's computer desk, underneath a monitor, in a shelf, in a home theater slash kind of living room environment very easily. And there's no question about it, it's the most ultimate compact PC you can get on the market. Now, the case that we're using on our PC is the Fantex Evolve Swift 2. It is a mini ITX form factor, but certainly not the most compact ITX case that you're going to find out there. But it has a relatively small footprint, about 170 millimeters by 240 millimeters, but it is quite tall at 490 millimeters. But thanks to that height, you have a GPU clearance rating of over 335 millimeters, so you can fit some relatively large and powerful GPUs into this system. Furthermore, another benefit of the size comes with the greater expandability options. You can actually fit up to 4 2.5-inch solid-state drives into the case, or a couple of 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives, as well as having lots of ports and connectivity options on the motherboard itself. Okay, so let's move on and finally talk about our benchmark performance results, starting with our CPU performance. We're going to first take a look at the single core and multi-core performance using Cinebench R23. In terms of the single core performance, both the M1 and the 5800X are getting around 1500 points, but on the multi-core performance, it's a different story. On the M1, we're getting around 7500 points, but 16,000 points on the 5800X. On Geekbench, we're a little bit faster in terms of the single core performance on the M1 at 1700 points versus 1600 points on the 5800X, but the AMD processor wins again in terms of the multi-core performance, getting over 10,000 points versus 7,500 points on the M1. Now, certainly the most important test for me specifically is the render output times on Premiere Pro. Now, on the M1, we are using the beta version of Premiere Pro that allows for GPU acceleration rendering, and basically on the same 4K 6-minute Premiere Pro project, it took about 4 minutes 19 seconds to export the video on the M1 Mac Mini versus on our PC using the 5800X and RTX 3060 Ti. It took about almost half that time at 2 minutes and 7 seconds to export that 6-minute 4K file. Now, in terms of the sequential read and write speeds of the SSD drives on both PCs, they're probably running on fairly similar platforms, PCI Express 4.0 and the SN750 500GB Western Digital drive using Crystal Disk Mark on the Windows platform got sequential read performance of just around 3 GB a second and write performance of 2.5 gigs. And on the Amorphous Disk Mark, which is kind of a port of Crystal Disk Mark on the OS X side, we're getting sequential read performance of about 2.8 gigabytes and write performance of 2.3 gigabytes on the 256 gigabyte SSD drive found on the M1 Mac Mini. Now, the graphical performance capabilities on the 8-core GPU on the M1 isn't quite mind-blowing. Obviously, it's going to be great for sub 720p, 1080p style resolution for gaming and graphics rendering, but anything beyond that 4K or ultra-wide is going to be quite a struggle. And to demonstrate that, we're going to show you the benchmark results on the Valley benchmark using a native resolution of 3840 by 1440 high detail settings, and on the M1 Mac Mini, we got average frame rate of 22.6 frames per second, and in the exact same settings and scenario using OpenGL, we got a average frame rate of 116.7 frames per second using the RTX 3060 Ti. That's obviously a night and day difference, and it's really no surprise since you are looking at a mid to higher end level NVIDIA graphics card that's available right now. It's obviously going to wipe the floor with the integrated graphics that we have on the M1 chip. But if you're interested to see how much more powerful, this is kind of going to give you a rough idea in terms of what a discrete graphics card can do compared to the M1. Now, the main question is, can you use the M1 as a main editing style PC, replace a Mac Mini or even a Mac Pro? I would say for the most part, yeah, you definitely can. In terms of the price to performance ratio, I think it's by far the best thing Apple has offered for many years and generations. In terms of, is it better than a PC? I would say certainly not. Even given the price point of some of the older parts that you can get in the used market, you can probably make a fairly powerful PC for $1,200 to $1,000 that will probably be faster than what the M1 processor in the Mac Mini can deliver right now. But really, other than that, guys, this is kind of a fun video I want to make to kind of test out the M1 against a moderately powerful PC. Definitely let me know what you guys think. Are you in the market for a compact PC? Would you go M1 or custom built? I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Make sure you have post notifications turned on so you get our videos once they become available. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you real soon in the next one. Take care.